Hey guys, can you feel the electricity in the air tonight? We begin with the absolutely fiery life and unforgettable legacy of Boudica, the warrior queen of the Iceni, whose raw courage and incandescent fury didn't just challenge the Roman Empire, it shook it to its very foundations. Can you even imagine the sheer force of will it would take? Her rebellion was more than just a fight. It was a brutal, beautiful, and utterly unforgettable roar of defiance, a defining moment of resistance that echoed through the misty hills of ancient Britain. From the moment she was crowned queen to the day she led tens, even hundreds of thousands of warriors into the heart of battle, Boudica's life was a tempest, a raging storm wrapped in cold iron and blazing fire. So, before you get too comfortable, before you settle in for the story, please take just a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely, truly enjoy what I do here. It means the world to me. And hey, I have to ask, where are you tuning in from tonight, and what time is it where you are? Let me know in the comments below. It's always so fascinating and humbling to see who's joining us from every corner of this incredible world. Now go on, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft, soothing background hum, and let's just ease into tonight's incredible journey together. You are not born in a palace. There is no echo of your first cries against cold marble floors. There are no golden cradles draped in silk, no servants rushing to your side. No, your world begins in a roundhouse, its roof a meticulously woven thatch of reeds, its floor the very packed earth of your homeland. Smoke, thick with the scent of peat and wood, curls lazily out of the hole in the ceiling, like it's late for some ancient appointment with the sky. Outside, can you hear it? The wind hums a wild, untamed song as it sweeps across the moors, a lonely and powerful sound. But inside, your mother hums something older, still a melody passed down through generations, a lullaby of earth and sky, of strength and sorrow. You are Iceni, born to the wind-swept eastern edges of Britannia, a land the Romans, in their arrogance, will one day call a distant, savage frontier. But to you it is simply home. It is everything. In this world, there are no maps drawn on parchment, only the instincts that beat in your blood. The rivers speak a language of their own. The ancient oaks stand as silent, watchful sentinels, and the land itself is a living entity. It feeds you when you show it respect, and it punishes you swiftly and without mercy when you don't. As a child, you are not sheltered from the world. You are thrust into it. You are wind-battered, mud-smeared, and sun-warmed, a true child of the elements. You learn the rhythm of a horse's gallop before you can properly walk a straight line. You learn the satisfying, dangerous weight of a spear in your small hand, long before you ever learn the delicate art of embroidery, which, let's be honest, is just as well, since your attempts at needlepoint look like a spider lost a fight with a ball of yarn. And your parents, they don't just allow this, they encourage it with fierce pride. Daughters must be as sharp as sons, they say, perhaps even sharper. Why? Because sons can be stupid and still inherit power. But daughters have to earn every ounce of respect they get. The elders of your tribe teach you stories not from dusty scrolls, but from the vibrant, living library of their memory. They weave tales of gods with great antlers that scrape the clouds, of formidable queens with wills of unbending iron, and of sacred rivers that possess the wisdom to carry cowards away on their currents. You listen with wide, captivated eyes, your mouth full of sweet, honeyed oats, the taste of your land. And a fire ignites within you. You don't just want to hear the stories anymore, do you? No. You want to be one. Your tribe lives close to the land, and even closer to rumor. Whispers carried on the same wind that rustles the thatch of your roof slither through the village. They speak of strange men with cloaks the color of blood and sandals of steel landing far to the south. These men the Romans build roads where the earth never asked for them, straight, unnatural scars upon the landscape. They cut down the most sacred and ancient groves, places of deep spiritual power, simply to make space for their relentless bureaucracy and their suffocating taxes. But for now, they are far away, just a shadow on the horizon. For now, you don't think about Rome. You think about the thundering freedom of horses. You think about the heavy bronze torque around your neck, a cool, substantial weight, passed down by the warrior women who came before you, a chain of strength linking you to your ancestors. You think about your name Boudica, and how it means victory. A smile plays on your lips at that. It feels less like a name and more like a prophecy, a destiny waiting to unfold. One day the Romans will know that name. They will learn to fear it. But for now, you are still growing, watching the mystical fog roll in from the sea, still waiting with a heart full of restless energy for your story to truly begin. By the time you're a mere 10 years old, you've already learned two fundamental and inescapable truths of Iceni life. One, the Romans are always up to something, their ambition a constant simmering threat. And two, if you don't learn how to swing a blade with deadly intent, you may very well end up under one. You grow up surrounded by warriors, but not the polished, disciplined soldiers you hear about in tales of Rome, with their matching uniforms and unnervingly synchronized marching. No, these are hardened, ferocious fighters with wild, untamed hair voices that boom and echo and absolutely no concept of an indoor volume. For them, armor is optional, but scars are a warrior's tapestry, each one telling a story of survival, of a lesson learned in blood and pain. Your tutors are not scholars poring over texts. They are survivors, their wisdom etched onto their very skin. Your lessons begin at the first blush of dawn, not with arithmetic or rhetoric, but with the sharp crack of a wooden sword against your shield and the stinging pain of a freshly bruised shin. You learn to block, to parry, to feel the flow of a fight in your bones, long before you even master the simple act of breathing through your nose properly during a spar. Every single meal, it seems, comes with a side of grueling training, whether it's dagger drills until your wrists ache, spear throws until your shoulder burns, or the surprisingly difficult task of dodging grumpy goats that seem to be personally offended by your very existence. Your education is one of constant motion and physical challenge. You're taught to ride by a man who seems more horse than human, a man who smells faintly of hay and earth, because, well, he often sleeps in the stables with his beloved beasts. Your first mount isn't some noble steed. It's a shaggy, stubborn pony with one perpetually squinting eye and the cantankerous attitude of a drunk badger. You, of course, bond with it immediately. But it's not all violence and ornery livestock, is it? There are moments of quiet learning, too. You sit by the crackling fire with the elders, the flames dancing in their weathered faces, as they argue about complex tribal matters with the same passionate intensity one might reserve for life and death decisions. Spoiler alert, sometimes they are. From them you learn the crucial arts of diplomacy and politics, when to speak your mind with force, when to hold your tongue, and listen with every fiber of your being. And most importantly, how to politely roll your eyes behind someone's back without being caught. And then, of course, there are the druids, the local mystics wrapped in their enigmatic robes and speaking in riddles, who insist on dragging you into ancient rituals involving looming standing stones, whispering sacred oaks, and long-winded dramatic poetry that may or may not be about you. One particularly theatrical elder, with eyes that seem to see right through you, insists that you were chosen by the gods. You're never quite sure which gods he means, or what exactly you've been chosen for, but it sounds vaguely and thrillingly threatening. You grow into your name, Boudica, victory, and soon you are queen, not by birthright alone, but through a powerful alliance. You marry Prasutagus, the ruling king of the Iceni. He is a clever man, a cautious man, and most importantly, a man who has mastered the difficult art of smiling politely at Rome while gritting his teeth so hard his jaw aches. Rome doesn't always conquer with swords and legions, you see. Sometimes it offers contracts, treaties, the illusion of partnership. That's what happened to your husband after an earlier failed revolt in 47 CE, a revolt that happened before your time. The Iceni agreed to become a client kingdom of Rome, a so-called friend and ally. In theory, you remain independent. In reality, you're now expected to nod approvingly at crippling Roman taxes, gaudy Roman architecture, and smug Roman officials who can't even be bothered to pronounce local names correctly. As queen, your life transforms. You now live in a larger roundhouse, one adorned with imported Roman pottery and frequented by the occasional visitor in polished armor, who smells overpoweringly of olive oil and superiority. You wear finer wool and jewelry shipped from across the sea, but you never ever forget the comforting familiar feel of iron and bone in your hand. You host lavish feasts, you pour rich wine, and you endure the excruciating agony of Roman small talk. Can you imagine the sheer willpower it takes? One visiting governor, in a gesture of supposed goodwill, gifts you a polished bronze mirror. You have to physically restrain yourself from returning the favor with your axe. Still, you play the part, and you play it well. Diplomacy, you learn, is just another kind of war with its own rhythms, its own feints and parries. You watch Prasutagus as he masterfully walks the tightrope between compliance and dignity. He trades with Rome, he keeps the fragile peace, but he never not for a single moment quite trusts the hand he's shaking. Together, you rule a tribe that hasn't surrendered, but hasn't yet fully rebelled. You give birth to daughters, two strong, sharp-eyed girls who carry your fire within them. They ride like lightning, and when provoked, they bite like it too. You train them not just in language and custom, but to speak with fire in their hearts. You don't raise them to marry well. You raise them to survive anything. Then your husband, your partner in this precarious dance, grows sick. The illness spreads slowly, relentlessly, like dark ink, seeping into clean water. Prasutagus, ever the pragmatist, knows what happens to tribal lands when their kings die without a Roman-friendly succession plan. So he does what he thinks is wise, what he believes is the only way to protect his family and his people. He writes a will. In it, he names the Roman emperor as co-heir to the Iceni kingdom alongside you and your precious daughters. He thinks it's a clever move, a compromise, a bridge between two worlds. But oh, how wrong he is. Rome doesn't do co-parenting. Rome doesn't share. And it especially does not share power with women. You bury your husband in a heavy, heart-wrenching silence. You place his ancestral torque upon the altar, a final offering to the gods of your people. And then you wait. You are not waiting for grief to pass, because you know grief is now a permanent resident in your soul. No, you are waiting for Rome to arrive. And you know with a chilling certainty that settles deep in your bones that they will not come bearing condolences. They will come bearing chains. Your husband's body is barely cold in the earth when they arrive. Roman administrators, their faces masks of smug superiority, their impractical cloaks swirling around them, descend upon your settlement. They have not come to mourn with a grieving queen. They have come to audit an estate. Can you feel the violation? They don't bring wreaths of flowers. They bring ledgers and soldiers. They don't offer words of comfort. They make demands. They do not come with condolences. Can you even imagine the audacity? No! They bring scrolls heavy with the ink of false legality, scowling debt collectors eager to seize what isn't theirs, and a particularly punchable Roman air of entitlement, whose very presence is an insult to your grief. Prasutagus' will, that desperate, hopeful document, naming both Rome and his family as co-heirs, is conveniently and utterly ignored. In a breathtaking act of imperial arrogance, the empire simply claims everything. They claim the land that has fed your people for centuries, the weapons that have defended your homes, the livestock that represents your tribe's wealth, the ancestral treasure that tells the story of your lineage, and even your throne, the very symbol of your right to lead. As if the fresh wound of grief wasn't insulting enough, they inform you with the cold, passionless tone of a bureaucrat filing paperwork that the Iceni are now fully and unconditionally under Roman control. There is no vote, there is no ceremony, there is just the scratch of a pen on Latin paperwork and the expectation of a forced, compliant smile. You try diplomacy, your voice steady despite the rage coiling in your gut. You quote their own laws back at them, the very treaties they signed, the promises they made. Do you know what they do? They quote steel back at you, the silent, menacing threat in the eyes of the soldiers who flank their administrator. And then it escalates. It escalates with a speed and brutality that takes your breath away. Roman soldiers storm your home. It's not a full army. They don't even grant you that dignity. No, they don't need one for this. They send just enough men to deliver a message of absolute domination, a lesson written in pain and humiliation. They tear down the symbols of your status as if they were nothing more than flimsy scaffolding for a new Roman order. And then, in an act of unimaginable cruelty, they strip you. They beat you, publicly. Can you feel the horror of it? You, the queen of the Iceni, are dragged through the dirt and dust of your own home, in front of your own people, and in front of your own daughters. The sharp, searing agony of the whip is nothing compared to the sound of your people's silenced cries, the sight of their averted, shamed eyes. And your daughters! You dare not even speak it aloud, the violation they endured, the horror that was forced upon them. It was a trauma that went beyond mere cruelty, the kind of calculated brutality Rome writes off as necessary discipline, the kind of soul-deep wound that never, ever leaves a mother's heart. You hold them afterward, their small bodies trembling and silent in your arms. You look into their eyes that should be filled with childhood innocence, and you see something old stir deep inside you. It is a feeling older than Rome itself, older than any empire. It is something the Romans in all their supposed sophistication could never understand: fury with a divine purpose. The village elders, their faces etched with fear, urge patience. They speak of Rome's inevitable crushing retribution. They speak of survival, of waiting, of the supposed wisdom of silence. But how can there be silence after this? You do not scream, not yet. The sound is trapped in your throat, a hot, solid knot of rage. But inside you, in the place where your heart used to be, a new oath is being written in blood and fire. The Iceni are watching you. Your people kneel beside you in the dirt, but it is not an act of weakness. It is a gesture of shared rage, a silent promise of solidarity. This wasn't just a personal insult to you. This was a message sent to every single Briton across the land. The message was clear: you will bow, or we will break you. And in that moment, a cold, clear thought crystallizes in your mind. If they truly wanted you broken, they should have killed you. You don't rise for your own dignity, though it has been savaged. You rise because the land itself, the ancient earth beneath your feet, demands it. The ancestors whose spirits whisper in the rustling oaks demand it. The gods of iron and river and sky demand it. You rise because your daughters will never ever be anyone's spoils of war. And somewhere far, far away, in a city of marble and self-importance, Rome has no idea that they've just made their worst, most fatal mistake. They called it justice. They called it order. They called it policy, a necessary correction for a disobedient client state. But what you remember is the sound. The sickening whistle of the whip, cutting through the air, the thud and tear of it on your own back. The profound, deafening silence of your people, a silence born not of apathy, but of horrified shock. You remember the weight of your daughter's stares, gazes, not full of fear, but something infinitely worse, a chilling, premature understanding. They know even at their young age that this isn't about tribute or land or politics. It's about humiliation. It's about power in its most naked and ugly form. You, Boudica, queen of the Iceni, dragged from your home and lashed like a common thief in front of your entire tribe. They didn't execute you, oh no. That would have been too simple. That would have made you a martyr. This, they thought, was far more efficient. You're left alive, visibly broken, publicly disgraced, meant to serve as a walking, breathing warning to all who would defy them. But whoever authorized this obscene spectacle had clearly never met an angry Briton mother. The fresh scars that crisscross your back don't hurt nearly as much as the searing memory of what was done to your daughters, the crime that can't be undone, the innocence that was stolen. They are too young for the vengeance they are owed, but you are not. And as the blood on your skin dries and stiffens your tunic, you begin to calculate. You don't scream, you plot. You attend the tribal councils, your face a mask of stoicism. You say little, you listen more. You gather the angry whispers from other tribes, just as bruised and humiliated as your own, the Trinovantes, the Catuvelauni, and others who have felt the heavy heel of the Roman boot. Rome thinks you are all fractured, a squabbling collection of rival clans, and they're right. But even a cracked rock can crush a man's skull if it is dropped from a great enough height. You begin speaking not of open rebellion at first, but in powerful metaphors that ignite the soul. You speak of the fire that sleeps in the embers of the coming storm, that gathers beyond the hills of the unholy rage of the mother bear, who loses her cubs to a careless hunter. You do not demand war. You simply offer revenge as a natural, inevitable consequence of Rome's actions. The women, the mothers and sisters and wives hear you first. Their support becomes your foundation. Then the elders, seeing the tide turn, lend their wisdom. Finally, the warriors, their pride wounded and their fists clenched, rally to your cause. You train in secret, in hidden clearings, and under the cloak of the new moon. Old, rusted weapons are pulled from their hiding places and reforged in sacred fires. The druids, sensing the shift in the spiritual wind, begin their chanting at night, their voices rising and falling in the darkness, calling on the old gods. The gods are listening. And so, unfortunately, are the Roman spies. But by the time they can piece together the whispers and understand the true scale of what is building, it will be far, far too late. You braid your daughter's hair with newly forged iron clasps. You sharpen your own spear until its edge glints with deadly promise. You paint your face, not for ceremony, but for war. And one morning you look at your reflection in the still water of the river, and you don't see a beaten queen. You see an executioner. Rome thought it was punishing you. What it actually did was give you the one thing no empire should ever hand its enemies: a reason. The wound has not healed, but now it bleeds forward, propelling you into action. You don't make grand, sweeping speeches, not at first. You don't need to. Your people have seen the latticework of scars on your back. They've seen the haunted, hardened look in your daughters' faces. That is the only campaign poster you will ever need. But war needs momentum, not just simmering pain. So you ride. You ride from village to village, from one smoky council fire to the next. Your very presence does most of the talking. You are tall, fierce, wrapped in a heavy wolf fur cloak, your fiery red hair flying wild in the wind. Some begin to say that your eyes gleam like hot coals in the dark. It's an exaggeration, probably, but you let them believe it. Why not fear? After all, travel's much faster than truth. You speak of freedom, but not in the pretty, abstract metaphors of Roman philosophers. You remind them in blunt and brutal terms what the Romans did to you, and by extension to them. You name the crushing taxes, the public floggings, the gods they've disrespected, the sacred groves they've desecrated for timber and stone. You speak plainly, your voice raw and powerful, because pure rage doesn't need poetry. The tribes begin to gather. First come the Trinovantes, old and bitter enemies of Rome, their grievance deep and personal. Then others follow Britons who never trusted you or the Iceni before, who suddenly see you not as royalty from a rival tribe, but as vengeance given flesh. You sharpen not just weapons, but memory. You smear your face with the blue dye of woad, the pigment staining your skin like a shard of the winter sky. It isn't just for intimidation, though it certainly works. It is a ritual. It is a rebirth. You are not the woman who was beaten. You are the storm she became. Your army grows, swelling from thousands to tens of thousands. Peasants with sharpened sickles stand beside seasoned warriors with long blades. Druids with eyes that seem to stare into another world march alongside them. Even the old and the lame bring something to the cause: food, horses, stories of defiance to fuel the fires. You ride at the head of this human tide in a chariot with iron-bladed wheels that cut through the mud like knives. And your daughters, they ride with you not as decorative ornaments, but as living omens of what this war is about. You are a family affair now, a mother not just of children, but of a rebellion that will set Britain ablaze. Word of your growing army reaches Roman ears, of course. At first they laugh. The beaten queen leading an army of farmers. How quaint, how barbarian. Then their scouts report the numbers, the scale, the shocking coordination. Rome stops laughing. But they still don't truly believe you'll do anything. After all, Britons bicker. Tribes feud. Women are meant to mourn. They don't lead wars. They certainly don't burn Roman cities to the ground. But you are not here to meet their expectations. You are here to set them and their world on fire. Smoke rises from your 1,000 campfires now, but soon, very soon, the smoke will rise from theirs. They deserve to carry some weight, don't they? This is only the beginning, a mere whisper of the storm to come. The next target is richer, larger, far more important, and so very, very Roman Londinium. You don't rest long. You can't afford to. Word of your victory spreads like wildfire, and so does the sweet, intoxicating scent of fear. Rome knows now. Oh yes, Rome knows your name, and Rome always responds. But you are faster than their bureaucracy, faster than their legions can march. You ride south toward Londinium, the glittering jewel of Roman Britain, a bustling trading hub that serves as the commercial artery of the entire province. It's a young city brash and arrogant, full of merchants counting their coins, off-duty soldiers spending their pay, and colonists dreaming of a new life built on conquered land. They say it's the very picture of the empire's glorious future. You decide with a cold and resolute heart to cancel that future. Along the road, the people begin to flee, a tide of terror flowing away from you. You don't chase them. You don't need to. Their raw animal panic works better than any banner, a more potent message than any proclamation. When refugees begin to outrun soldiers, you know your message is truly landing in their hearts. By the time you reach the outskirts of Londinium, a city built with an audacious confidence, you see it. The red cloaks of the legionaries are gone. The governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, a hard, pragmatic man who had been busy putting down another rebellion in Wales, made it back just in time to retreat. Can you imagine his choice? He stood there, looked at the sheer scale of your numbers, saw the endless sea of your fires painting the horizon, gazed upon a sky darkened by the smoke of your righteous fury, and did the most Roman thing imaginable. He calculated. He left. He abandoned the city and its civilian population to save the province, a cold, logical sacrifice you almost respect. You don't hesitate for a second. Londinium is wide open. The streets once paved and prepared for triumphant parades now run with rivers of ash and blood. The bustling marketplaces that once sold exotic olive oil and sweet-honeyed dates are stripped clean and then raised to the heavens in pillars of flame. Roman homes filled with stolen wealth and gaudy mosaics, sturdy warehouses packed with grain extorted from local farmers, and opulent bathhouses where they washed away the grime of their conquest, all are reduced to smoldering cinders and blackened stone. There are those who stay behind, of course. Some foolishly believe the empire will protect them, that a legion will appear over the next hill. Some are too old, too proud, or simply too slow to escape the coming judgment. To them, you issue one final chilling offer, your voice ringing out over the growing chaos. Leave now, or be judged by the gods of your land and of mine. Many in their arrogance ignore you. History written by the trembling hands of Roman scribes will call what happens next a massacre. They naturally will count the bodies with meticulous care, claiming tens of thousands perished. Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. But what you know deep in your bones is this: for years, you were unheard, and now the entire world is forced to listen. Amid the roaring flames that consume a Roman dream, you find a half-burned ledger, its pages curled and blackened at the edges. It lists names beside columns of debts, a record of their financial oppression. With a flick of your wrist, you toss it into the heart of a burning villa and keep walking, erasing their power one ledger at a time. No temples are spared, not this time. You tear the marble statues of their indifferent gods down with your own hands, feeling the cold stone crumble beneath your fury. The gods who watched your daughters suffer, who heard their cries and did nothing, get no mercy from you. By nightfall, Londinium is silent, a profound and eerie quiet where a city used to be. The city does not scream anymore. You ride out with your army, an army now larger than before. Its ranks swelled by freed slaves and vengeful Britons, its spirit fed by smoke and fury. The next target is already chosen. Verulamium awaits. And after that, the final reckoning. Verulamium isn't just Roman. It's Roman with a smug, self-satisfied ambition. Its streets are paved with imported stone. Its public squares boast fountains that never asked the local water spirits for permission. And its sprawling villas stretch wider than most tribal clearings. It's not a raw military post. It's a statement of permanence, a polite and civilized declaration of dominance wrapped in intricate mosaics and relentless taxes. You head there next, a tide of retribution rolling across the land. By now, the message of your coming precedes you. The merchants of Verulamium have heard the terrifying tales from Camulodunum. They've seen the pillar of smoke that was once Londinium. They know what happens to those who welcome Rome too eagerly into their hearts and homes. The wealthy, the collaborators, and the Romans themselves pack their carts in a frenzy. They flee west, desperately clutching their silver household gods and ledgers full of unpaid grain contracts, their greed intact even in their terror. You let them go. Vengeance, you have learned, has a schedule, and you are its meticulous keeper. When you finally arrive at the city's gates, it's not resistance you meet, but a hollow, echoing emptiness. The soldiers are long gone. The politicians have vanished. Only the unlucky, the infirm, and a few stubborn fools who simply didn't believe in you remain. These are the kind of people who assumed no mother, no woman, no tribal queen could ever make the mighty Roman Empire tremble. You are there to show them otherwise. The city gates left unbarred fall open like rotten fruit. Your warriors pour through the streets a river of humanity, and the flames dutifully follow. The grand town center, once designed to awe Britons into submission, cracks and collapses under the weight of its own pride. The temple is empty, but you burn it anyway as a matter of principle. The bathhouses hiss like dying snakes as the cold river water your warriors throw on them turns to steam against the heated stones. Statues of emperors melt into grotesque, unrecognizable shapes. Market stalls, once vibrant with commerce, char into black skeletons. A scroll tossed from the balcony of a burning administrative building flutters down and lands at your feet. You glance down at the neat Latin script, the columns of numbers, and one word repeated over and over again, tribute. A grim, humorless smile touches your lips, and you toss it into the nearest fire. It's not just the city that burns, it's what it stood for. Verulamium was meant to be the future, a fully Romanized Britain, a place where the sound of Latin silenced the old songs, where imported wine replaced honest mead, and where a woman like you would be expected to bow instead of lead. Instead, it is nothing but smoke and rubble. By the third day, it's done. You have burned 3 Roman towns to the very ground. Your army swells with every step, with every falling ember. Some join because they believe in the cause. Some join because they fear being left behind. Some join simply because they have nowhere else to go. You don't ask why anymore. You only ride forward. You've struck hard at the body of the beast. Now you know Rome will strike back with its teeth. The governor is preparing a defense. And the final battle, the one that will decide everything, is waiting for you on the horizon. You ride through a world of ash now. It clings to your boots. It dusts your hair. You can taste it in your breath. The gods have had their offering, 3 Roman cities burned to the bones, their proud columns toppled like brittle trees in a storm. You have written your message in smoke and charred stone for all the world to see, but you're starting to feel the immense weight of it all. Not regret, never regret, but consequence. Your army is massive, unpredictable, a glorious and terrifying thing, but it's also becoming a bit bloated. There are too many mouths to feed, too much looted treasure to carry, and not nearly enough discipline. The chariots creak and groan under the weight of stolen pottery and fine Roman furniture. Some warriors now ride with heavy gold necklaces draped around their necks and fine Roman tunics worn like trophies. A few have even swapped their spears for wine jugs, their battle cries turning into drunken songs. They cheer you still, of course. They still chant your name with fervor. But it's changing. This army is no longer just about vengeance. It has become a movement, a myth, a force of pure momentum. And momentum has no brakes. You hear the whispers in the camp at night. Some ask when you'll finally stop. Others ask why you haven't already marched on the heavily defended Roman fortresses. And the others, the more honest ones, ask where the next rich town to loot will come from. Justice has followers, but you're learning that treasure has investors. The Druids sense it too, this shift in the wind. They urge you to perform rituals, to ground the army, to do something to keep the center from crumbling under its own weight. You nod, but you say little. Even you can feel the tilt. You still ride at the front, a fearsome and inspiring sight. Your daughters hardened now by fire, and war never leave your side. But at night when they sleep, you stare into the flickering flames of your campfire and count the days since it all began. You thought revenge would taste sharper, cleaner. Instead, it tastes like iron and smoke, a bitter tea with no end in sight. And you know with a cold dread that Rome is regrouping. Suetonius has returned from Wales with a real army this time. Not retired reservists, but hardened, disciplined veterans of the Quaeftined Gemina and parts of the Fecul Valeria Victrix. These men live in tight formations. They move with a terrifying precision. They possess a professional discipline you have never faced. You hear he's chosen the perfect battleground for his strategy, a narrow valley with woods at his back, a place with no flanks for your wild cavalry to sweep around, no space for your chariots to outmaneuver them. You have burned cities, but cities don't fight back. Now you will face soldiers, real ones, the ones who don't panic when you scream, who don't run, at the sight of blue war paint, who don't hear gods in the wind. You have the numbers tens of thousands of them, a raging sea of humanity. But he has precision. The druids say the gods still favor you, that the omens are still strong. But you are beginning to wonder if omens can hold a formation when the arrows start to fall. Whether Boudica died honorably, dishonorably, or simply disappeared into the mists of time, no one truly agrees. And perhaps that is the most fitting end for a woman who refused to be defined by anyone but herself. The Roman historian Tacitus, ever the pragmatist, claims she took poison, choosing a swift end over the degradation of capture and a humiliating parade through the streets of Rome. Cassius Dio, writing later, suggests a more mundane end, that she succumbed to illness, her body finally breaking after her spirit had been pushed to its limits. But there is another story, the one whispered by her own people, that she simply rode her chariot into the thick fog of the fens and became a legend, a guardian spirit of the land. It's a nice story, isn't it? The kind that's easy to market, easy to believe. But Rome, in its cold efficiency, prefers closure, something definitive and footnotable for their official histories. And what of your daughters, the very spark that ignited this inferno? They vanish from the record entirely, a chilling silence that speaks volumes. It is Rome's final, quiet way of admitting just how deeply you scared them, a tacit acknowledgement that the lineage of such a woman was too dangerous to even mention again. Britain remains under Roman control, of course, but it's different now, a changed and warier place. The empire doesn't build grand new temples to emperors like Claudius anymore. Instead, it tightens the reins with a nervous hand. It fortifies the existing settlements, garrisons more troops, and builds more walls. They rule, yes, but they do so cautiously with the occasional haunted glance over their shoulder, forever listening for the sound of chariot wheels on the horizon. They will pretend you were a fluke, a temporary madness, a historical outburst. But moments don't burn cities to the ground. Outbursts don't rally nations from disparate bickering tribes into a unified force of vengeance. You became the one thing Rome, for all its power, could never truly annex or control a myth. Years pass. Centuries bleed into one another. The mighty Roman Empire, once thought to be eternal, eventually collapses under its own weight, as all empires inevitably do. But your name, Boudica, survives. It is passed in hushed whispers through the ancient British woods. It is carved crudely into standing stones. It is sung in fire-lit halls by those who cherish the memory of defiance. They turn you into a symbol, a vessel for their hopes and fears. Sometimes you are a warrior queen, sometimes a vengeful goddess, sometimes the very mother of a nation yearning to be free. The Victorians, always sentimental and in love with a romantic past, will eventually build a grand bronze statue of you in London, the heart of their own empire. There you are, frozen in time, chariot wheels spinning, daughters protectively by your side, forever captured in the heroic moment just before the charge. Can you see the irony? You, who so nearly broke an empire, are reduced to an inspiration for tourists, a picturesque historical figure. But somehow you don't mind, because myths are stubborn things, and fire, even long after it has been extinguished, leaves behind an indelible heat in the ground. In every rebellion against tyranny, your shadow lingers. In every protest march for justice, your footsteps echo. In every woman who is told to sit down, be small, and stay quiet, there is a defiant whisper. Boudica did not. History written by the victors tries to bury you beneath the ruins of your defeat, but it never quite manages to keep the earth still. You are not gone. You are rooted, and the ashes they left behind. They are more fertile than they could ever imagine. Now let's begin with the smoke. See it. Thin, curling, persistent, it rises slowly and deliberately through the still, heavy air of a sacred hall, the kind of place built with silence in mind. You could be in ancient Mesopotamia, or perhaps the grand temples of Egypt, or maybe even a shrine in India. Ultimately, it doesn't matter much, because the practice, the understanding, is nearly the same. Here, fragrance is not a luxury. It is a profound necessity. Priests barefoot and robed in clean linen carry small clay burners or ornate bronze censers filled with glowing, fragrant embers. Upon these shimmering coals, they carefully drop resin beads of hardened tree sap, precious jewels gathered from distant exotic lands. There is frankincense, with its bright, clean, almost citrus-like edge, and myrrh, its darker, earthier, and almost bitter counterpart. The very moment the resin touches the hot coal, it sizzles, then smokes, and then gloriously it perfumes. The air is no longer just air. It is sanctified, transformed into an invisible bridge between the mortal and the divine. In the temples of Egypt, they took this spiritual technology even further. A complex and sacred blend known as kaifi was meticulously prepared, a secret recipe containing over a dozen ingredients, including wine, honey, raisins, juniper berries, and cinnamon. It wasn't cooked during the day under the harsh sun. It was prepared at dusk, when the coolness of the evening air allowed the precious aromas to rise more gently, to be captured more fully. Kaifi wasn't just a fragrance, it was a ritual in itself. The very making of it was a form of prayer. The burning of it was a direct offering, and the smell of it was believed to calm the restless hearts of gods and the spirits of the dead. In ancient India, sandalwood and camphor played similar vital roles. In the sun-drenched temples of Greece, priests burned aromatic woods and resins to accompany their hymns, the scent weaving through the words of the chorus. In early Israelite tradition, the burning of incense was dictated by exact divine measurements. Too much or the wrong mixture was considered dangerously disrespectful. Divine things, you see, had rules. But why all this meticulous attention to smell? Because for the ancients, scent was a pathway. It was a road leading from the tangible world of the mortal to the ethereal realm of the divine. Unlike statues or songs, scent is invisible, yet omnipresent. It lingers, it travels in all directions, and it reaches you even if you close your eyes and block your ears. To ancient peoples, this ephemeral quality made it uniquely sacred. So the temples remained fragrant constantly, not just during specific ceremonies. The air itself became a continuous offering. A place could smell holy. And if a place could smell holy, then maybe, just maybe, you could too. Now breathe in deeply, as if you were standing there in that sacred space, and exhale slowly. Let the smoke rise and fade. Now, let us allow our senses to drift east to the warm, sun-kissed shores of Egypt, to the glittering cosmopolitan city of Alexandria. Imagine the breeze coming off the Mediterranean, salty, warm, and heavy, with the intoxicating scents of night-blooming jasmine and rich sandalwood. Here, Cleopatra, Queen of the Nile ruler, linguist and an alchemist of seduction, did not simply wear perfume. She crafted legend from it. Cleopatra understood something that few rulers before or since have truly grasped. The nose remembers long after gold has dulled and words have faded into silence. Scent lingers. It clings to memory like a ghost. So she used it not only to entice, but to command. She wasn't merely perfumed. She was a walking, breathing, unforgettable experience. According to the Roman historian Plutarch, Cleopatra once had the sails of her magnificent royal barge soaked in precious perfume oils of rose and cinnamon. Why? So that her arrival could be detected by scent alone, a fragrant announcement carried on the breeze long before her ship ever came into view. The very air around her was curated. You smelled Cleopatra before you saw her. You remembered her long after she had left. Inside her palace, she maintained dedicated perfume laboratories where skilled attendants mixed fragrant oils with myrrh balsam and rare, costly resins from Arabia and India. These weren't just pleasant concoctions thrown together. Cleopatra studied them. She experimented. She believed with a conviction born of knowledge that certain scents could stir passion, bring restful sleep, or even shift a person's fate. In this she wasn't wrong. She was practicing aromatherapy thousands of years before the word ever existed. And yet her perfumes were more than merely romantic. They were sharp and effective political tools. When Cleopatra met with Julius Caesar, and later with Mark Antony, she was already a master of timing dress and, most importantly, smell. She knew precisely which oils to wear in which settings: holy frankincense in the temples, bright neroli for celebratory banquets, and heavy sensual musk and spikenard in her private chambers. Every single note had a purpose. There is even a legend that Cleopatra once created a scent so impossibly alluring that it caused a battle-hardened Roman general to forget his own name. That may be fiction, but what is certain is this: no other ruler in history made fragrance into a language as fluently as she did. For Cleopatra, perfume was not an indulgence. It was power. It was strategy. It was a whisper delivered not through the voice, but through the very air itself. So tonight, if your room is still, imagine her walking past. You won't hear her, but perhaps if you concentrate, you'll smell rose and cinnamon and a honeyed wind. And that truly will be enough. Now let the breeze take us to the marble courtyards of Greece and Rome, lands of towering columns, treasured scrolls, and long philosophical walks under the Mediterranean sun. But tonight, we do not come for the thrill of debate. We come for the soul of fragrance. The Greeks approached scent with an insatiable curiosity, a blend of art and science. They believed that aroma was far more than mere decoration. It was a force that could shape human behavior, influence health, and even touch upon morality itself. Can you imagine a world where scent was taken so seriously? Hippocrates, the revered father of medicine, didn't just diagnose illnesses. He prescribed aromatic baths and fragrant massages to maintain a perfect balance in the body's humors and the mind's temperament. For him, a drop of rosemary oil wasn't just a pleasant smell. It was a potent medicine. Sandalwood could soothe a troubled spirit, while myrrh could purify a wound. Scent, in his view, was a tool to align the soul. But not everyone agreed with this aromatic philosophy. The great philosopher Plato, ever wary of earthly pleasures, looked upon perfume with a deep and profound suspicion. In his idealized republic, perfume softened one's character. It made a person lazy, indulgent, and distracted from the higher pursuits of logic and civic duty. A strong citizen, he argued, should smell of the virtues of hard work, of honest olive oil, and the dust of the gymnasium, not of exotic and distracting spices from faraway lands. And yet in practice, it seems most Greeks politely ignored him. Fragrance remained overwhelmingly popular, an essential part of life's most important moments. At vibrant banquets, at joyous weddings, and even at solemn athletic festivals, wreaths of fresh lavender or crushed mint were worn upon the head not just for style, but to keep the mind sharp and the spirit light. Then came the Romans, and they didn't just adopt the Greek love of perfumes. They escalated the entire affair into a magnificent empire-wide obsession. Is it possible to imagine a society more saturated in scent? Romans perfumed everything. They bathed in fragrant rose water. They scented their clothes with precious saffron. They even sprinkled perfumed dust on the floors of their banquet halls so that each footstep would release a new cloud of fragrance into the air. At the most grand and decadent feasts, guests were anointed with different scented oils between each course, a symphony of aromas to accompany the symphony of flavors. Some incredibly wealthy Romans even had fountains in their courtyards that sprayed perfumed water into the air, creating a constant, fragrant mist. The Emperor Nero, in an act of legendary excess, once ordered an entire ceiling in his golden house to be designed to rain fresh rose petals and a delicate mist of myrrh down upon his unsuspecting guests. And yet even among the Romans, this extravagance had its critics. Seneca the Younger, a stern, stoic philosopher, and a man who valued discipline above all else, complained bitterly that the public baths reeked of too many perfumes. A man, he grumbled, should not smell like a bouquet. To him, virtue did not wear cologne. It wore the scent of austerity and self-control. Still, despite these philosophical objections, perfumes remained deeply embedded in every facet of Roman life, in romance, in ritual, and most certainly in death. Beautifully crafted perfume bottles, made of delicate glass, smooth alabaster, or humble clay, were essential grave goods buried with the dead to accompany them into the afterlife. For the Romans, as for so many ancient cultures, scent was not just for the living. It was the very essence of remembrance, a final, fragrant farewell. In both Greece and Rome, perfumes walked a fine and fascinating line between luxury and necessity, between virtue and vice. They were invisible, yet undeniably powerful, capable of changing the mood of an entire room or altering the memory of a single moment. Now let us drift further back in time, further than Rome, further than Greece, to the cradle of civilization itself, to the Fertile Crescent, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers cradle the reeds, and the great ziggurats rise like steps to the heavens. Here, in ancient Mesopotamia, the lands of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, long before Cleopatra's perfumed sails, or the rosewater fountains of Rome, people were already deeply, profoundly obsessed with scent. Can you fathom it? In delicate clay tablets dating back over 4,000 years, etched with the world's first writing, we find intricate recipes for perfumes. Some were dedicated to the gods, their formulas considered divine revelations. Others were created exclusively for kings and queens, their scents a symbol of earthly power. These early perfumers, the first in recorded history, used crushed herbs, sacred resins, and fragrant flowers, meticulously mixing them into animal fats or pressed oils. Myrrh, cypress, calamus root, and the noble cedar were ground into fragrant pastes, their creation a form of sacred art. And these were not random mixtures. They followed precise proportions and documented methods. They wrote it all down in elegant cuneiform script, creating the world's first known perfume manuals. Scent was deeply and inextricably tied to status. The high priests of the great temples anointed the statues of their deities daily, not with simple water, but with consecrated oils. To neglect the scenting of a god's statue was considered a grave sacrilege, an act that could upset the cosmic order. In their worldview, that which smelled good was pure holy and aligned with the divine. That which stank was a sign of chaos, decay, and evil. In Babylon, the legendary hanging gardens may or may not have truly existed, but aromatic plants like coriander thyme and fragrant roses certainly did. The palace gardens weren't just for food or beauty. They were, in essence, vast open-air perfume factories. As the warm wind blew through them, the very air itself became a fragrant extension of the king's power and wealth. Perfume also played a crucial and sophisticated role in courtship. In ancient Assyrian records, we find evidence of men of high status sending perfumed garments or oil-soaked handkerchiefs as intimate gifts to the women they desired. These gestures spoke volumes without a single word needing to be uttered. "I smell of wealth," they whispered. "I am worth remembering." Mesopotamian burial rites also included perfume as an essential element. The body was washed with precious oils, and the tomb was filled with scented goods. In life, scent was a marker of status. In death, it was a profound symbol of dignity. They believed that fragrance might help the spirit transition more gently from this world to the next. And then there were the merchants, the brave and adventurous souls, who fueled this ancient obsession. Babylonian traders traveled impossibly far for rare spices and precious resins, their journeys giving birth to the scent, trade one of the earliest global networks in human history, linking the Indus Valley with Arabia and Egypt in a quiet, fragrant economy where the cost of myrrh often rivaled the price of gold. Let the desert sands settle now and step quietly with me into the heart of ancient Egypt, a place where scent was not merely a fleeting pleasure, but a sacred gateway to eternity itself. In the land of the pharaohs, perfume was inseparable from ritual medicine and the very fabric of the afterlife. It wasn't just for the living, it was perhaps even more importantly for the dead. And so, the hallowed art of embalming became the highest and most sacred form of perfumery. The process was painstaking and deeply elaborate. The body was first washed in palm wine, not just to cleanse it, but to spiritually purify it. Then natron, a kind of natural salt harvested from the desert, was applied to draw out every last bit of moisture. But here is where the true fragrance begins. After this period of desiccation, the body was lovingly anointed in layer upon layer of precious oils, cedarwood myrrh, frankincense, cinnamon, and juniper berry. Can you imagine the scent of that sacred chamber? These were not random selections, not a mere attempt to make the body smell pleasant. Each oil served a specific spiritual purpose, and each scent had a profound symbolic meaning. Frankincense, with its bright citrus-like bite, was believed to drive away evil spirits. Myrrh, with its earthy and slightly bitter notes, represented healing and rebirth. Cinnamon, warm and spicy, was thought to warm the body for its long journey. These oils didn't just preserve the flesh, they consecrated it. The ultimate goal of mummification was not simply to stop decay, it was to utterly transform the body into something holy, something divine, something eternally sweet-smelling. The ancient Egyptians believed that the gods themselves smelled good, that the very breath of the gods was fragrant. Therefore, to enter the afterlife and stand before them, one had to smell like a god. Even the thousands of yards of linen wrappings were scented, soaked in these precious oils, and layered around the body in careful, intricate spirals. Sacred amulets were tucked between the folds, each one a prayer and a protection. In some royal tombs, archaeologists have found small, exquisite perfume jars, still sealed, still containing the faint traces of a thick, resinous paste. Thousands of years old, and yet when opened, still faintly miraculously aromatic. Perfume was also a vital part of the funerary offerings. Jars of kai-fi, the sacred incense blend, were placed near the sarcophagus to comfort the spirit. Perfumed cones made of wax and scented with lotus and honey were worn on the wigs of mourners during funeral rituals. These cones would slowly melt in the Egyptian heat, anointing the head and releasing a steady stream of fragrance throughout the long ceremony. It was a form of both visual and olfactory theater, a multisensory experience of grief and hope. To the Egyptians, death did not smell of decay. It smelled of myrrh, of pine resin, of flowers of eternity. Let us follow the trail now, not of armies or empires, but of something far more subtle, the trail of fragrance itself, invisible, persistent, and profoundly valuable. This is the story of the spice routes, the ancient arteries of trade, where perfume was born, bottled, and sent drifting across civilizations. Long before perfumes were mass-produced in gleaming factories, their precious ingredients had to be hunted, harvested, and hauled sometimes over thousands of treacherous miles. Can you picture the journey myrrh trees being bled for their resin in the hot, dry lands of the Horn of Africa? Cinnamon bark being carefully peeled from trees in the lush forests of Sri Lanka. Spikenard roots being dug from the high, cold altitudes of the Himalayas. And frankincense being gathered from the sacred trees of southern Arabia, which bled a resin like golden tears. These weren't just exotic aromas, they were currency, their value often exceeding that of precious metals. The demand was constant and insatiable. Babylon wanted frankincense for its temples. Egypt needed myrrh for its embalmers. Greece adored the sweet scent of rose oil. And Rome demanded everything. But none of these great civilizations had all the ingredients they craved. So the merchants set out, by camel caravan, by ox cart, and by fragile wind-powered ships, they crossed blistering deserts and stormy, unpredictable seas. Their precious cargo was sealed in clay pots or stitched into goatskin pouches. These perfume ingredients were precious and perishable. A single cracked jar of oil or a waterlogged pouch could ruin a merchant's entire fortune. But the rewards for success were enormous. In some periods, a single pound of cinnamon was worth more than a pound of silver, and along these sprawling routes, ideas traveled too. Techniques, recipes, and philosophies were exchanged along with the goods. Perfume was not merely traded, it was transformed. In India, perfumers experimented with the revolutionary new technique of distillation. In Arabia, they refined methods for capturing delicate floral essences using enfleurage and oil maceration. In Persia, fragrance became deeply entwined with poetry medicine and the very concept of paradise itself. By the time these materials reached the markets of Greece or Rome, they carried not only their scent, but also their story. A small vial of spikenard wasn't just an exotic smell. It was a legend. Kings had traded for it. Saints would one day be anointed with it. These ancient highways, stretching from China to the Mediterranean, weren't marked by signs or milestones, but by smell. To enter a bustling market in Damascus was to be enveloped in a thick, intoxicating cloud of cardamom saffron and sandalwood. To turn a corner in the stone-carved city of Petra was to pass walls lined with shops selling fragrant resins and dried rose petals. The great cities of the ancient world smelled like the world. Now let us walk softly into the sacred groves and stone temples of ancient India, where fragrance was not just worn, it was worshipped. In India, scent was woven into every single layer of life. Medicine, ritual, love, and philosophy. The Vedas, some of the oldest scriptures known to humanity, speak of perfumes and incense as essential gifts to the gods. Offerings of ghee, camphor, and sandalwood were burned in sacred fires, not to mask an odor, but to elevate a prayer to carry it on the fragrant smoke up to the heavens. Scent was seen as a purifier, not of places, but of souls. Among the most revered of all scents was sandalwood, smooth, creamy, and cooling. It was ground into a fine paste and applied lovingly to the statues of deities, to the foreheads of priests as a mark of blessing, and to the bodies of the dead to prepare them for their final journey. The scent was considered calming to both gods and humans. To apply it was to align oneself with a state of profound peace. Other popular ingredients included the rich, smoky scent of agarwood, the earthy aroma of vetiver, and the intoxicating sweetness of jasmine. Garlands of fresh jasmine weren't just beautiful decorations for weddings and festivals. They were believed to awaken feelings of love and divine connection. In classical Sanskrit poetry, lovers often describe each other not just by their appearance, but by their unique personal fragrance. Perfume wasn't bottled in the modern sense. Instead, it was blended fresh, a living art form. Precious oils were extracted by soaking flower petals in sesame or coconut oil, sometimes with milk, and then filtering the mixture through fine cloth. This slow, deliberate, and meditative process gave rise to Attar's highly concentrated natural perfumes that were treasured for their depth and complexity. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Indian perfumery was its deep and intrinsic link to meditation and healing. In the ancient system of Ayurveda, certain smells were said to balance the body's vital energies, known as doshas. For example, cooling vetiver was used to soothe inflammation, while warming cinnamon could stir a sluggish circulation. The nose in this philosophy was the very entrance to the brain, and therefore the gateway to consciousness itself. Incense, too, was central to spiritual life. In temple halls, thin sticks of doop sent coils of smoke spiraling toward the ceiling, carrying prayers upward. In homes, families lit incense at dawn, and dusk a fragrant ritual to welcome and release the day. Even now, Millions continue this ancient ritual quietly, reverently, without needing a single word. Let us now cross into ancient China, a land of balance, silence, and a profound, subtle beauty. Here scent was not loud or lavish. It did not announce itself. It whispered. It drifted gently like a stroke of calligraphy in the air. In early Chinese culture, perfume was not about adornment or seduction. It was about achieving harmony. Scent was a tool to align the spirit with the rhythms of nature and to bring one's inner world into balance with the outer one. It was philosophy, not fashion. The ancient Chinese used incense far more than they used oils. Oils were often considered too strong, too assertive, too disruptive to the delicate balance of one's personal energy. Incense, on the other hand, had discipline. It could be measured, timed, and shaped. Thin coils of incense could be made to burn for hours, marking the passage of the day in a gentle, fragrant way. In Buddhist temples, monks used sandalwood and agar-wood incense to focus their meditation, the soft, rising smoke serving as both a clock and a compass leading the mind inward on its journey to stillness. Confucian scholars, too, were deeply devoted to incense. A quiet study or a library would not be considered complete without a bronze censer gently smoking in the corner. The scent was thought to cleanse the mind before study, or writing to create a space of clarity and focus. It wasn't decoration. It was preparation. In Taoist practice, fragrance symbolized qi, the vital energy of life itself. If your surroundings smelled wrong, it was a sign that your body was probably imbalanced. Aromatic herbs like kaur cassia bark, star anise, and clove were prescribed not only to improve a scent, but to restore one's health. Fragrance, medicine, and spirit were all understood to be one and the same. Even clothing was scented. Small, beautifully embroidered pouches called xiang nang were worn at the waist, filled with fragrant herbs. These weren't just pleasant, they were seen as protective. It was believed that wearing herbs like mugwort and patchouli could ward off illness and evil spirits. During the Tang and Song dynasties, these fragrant sachets became a true art form, intricately embroidered, sometimes jeweled, and often given as cherished gifts during festivals. Perfume was also used as a powerful device in poetry. The great poets of the Tang era often described the seasons not by their color or sound, but by their smell. Spring arrived with the scent of plum blossoms. Autumn was marked by the fragrance of fallen leaves and old damp wood. A person's memory, or their very character, could be described by the scent they left behind, a fragrant legacy that lingered long after they were gone. Now, let us take a final collective breath. A breath that travels across time, across blistering deserts and wide rivers, through the opulent palaces and sacred temples of a world long past. We return to the present, but the fragrance of the ancient world still lingers faintly, stubbornly. So much of what was once known about ancient perfumery has vanished, lost to the winds of time. The formulas were kept as closely guarded secrets protected by priests, physicians, and master perfumers. Some recipes were inscribed on clay tablets, others on delicate papyrus scrolls. Many were tragically lost to fire, to flood, or to conquest. The great libraries of Nineveh and Alexandria, that repositories of ancient knowledge, both held priceless fragrance texts. None survived intact. And yet here and there, whispers remain. In 2012, archaeologists unearthed what they believe to be a 2,000-year-old perfume factory in Cyprus, complete with burnt clay vats still holding the traces of lavender and olive oil. In Egypt, chemical analysis of residues found in ancient tomb jars has suggested complex mixtures of myrrh, cinnamon, and lotus oil. In Israel, scholars have attempted to reconstruct the sacred temple incense, the ketoret based on ancient texts, its exact ingredients still debated, still held sacred. Even Cleopatra's legendary perfumes have been reimagined. A team of researchers in 2019 claimed to have reproduced one of her signature blends based on ancient recipes and residue analysis from Egyptian perfume bottles. The result? A scent that was dark, spicy, earthy, and incredibly long-lasting. It was not the kind of light, fleeting perfume found in modern shops, but something deeper, something older, something with a soul. Perfume, after all, is memory suspended in oil. It tells stories silently. You cannot hold it, and yet it holds you. A single drop can carry 1,000 years. Today, the descendants of those ancient scents live on in our own rituals, in our medicine, in the simple joy of flowers pressed between the pages of a book. Modern perfumers still use agar wood from the Far East, just as in ancient China. They still use myrrh and frankincense, just as in Mesopotamia. Rose oil is still expensive, still beloved, just as Cleopatra favored it. Even the idea of scent as something sacred remains. Lighting a stick of incense before meditation, spraying a special perfume before an important evening, washing a loved one's hands in rose water. These gestures are ancient. We have just forgotten how ancient they truly are. And now a different story begins, not with a scent, but with a sound. It did not begin with the clank of chains or the bark of a bloodhound, but with something far softer, far more dangerous, a whisper. A whisper passed from one person to another, under the heavy cloak of darkness behind the closed doors of slave cabins, and in the hushed pews of secret church meetings. It wasn't a name or a threat. It was a direction north. In the early 1800s, enslaved African Americans began fleeing the brutal plantations of the American South, not just with a desperate burning hope, but with help. This help came to be known as the Underground Railroad. But it was not an actual railroad. There were no iron tracks, no steam-powered trains. It was a hidden, intricate web of people, places, and plans, a network of courage carved into memory. It was comprised of routes that followed the stars of safe houses, disguised as ordinary farms of barn lofts, with hidden trap doors of false bottom wagons, and of cellars concealed behind secret walls. The conductors, who were often free Black Americans, white abolitionists, or formerly enslaved people themselves, guided the runaways mostly on foot, almost always by night, using only the stars, especially the North Star, to navigate. They crossed treacherous swamps, raging rivers, and dense, dark forests. They slept in haystacks and the hollows of ancient trees, and they knew that one wrong knock on a door, one misplaced footstep could mean capture, torture, or death. Yet the system worked, and it spread. Word of mouth became the most powerful signal in this silent war for freedom. They used coded songs, intricately stitched quilts, and secret phrases to mark the houses that could be trusted. A lantern hung in a certain window, a particular flower planted out front. Everything meant something. This network wasn't centralized. There were no headquarters, no official leadership. It was a living, breathing organism built on raw bravery, shaped by absolute secrecy, and relying entirely on a foundation of trust. A person risking everything to run had to place their life in the hands of complete strangers in strange lands with no absolute certainty of safety. And yet they ran. By the mid-1800s, the Underground Railroad stretched from the Deep South all the way to northern states like Ohio and Pennsylvania, and even farther into the sanctuary of Canada, where the brutal laws of the United States could not reach. Thousands upon thousands of people escaped to freedom through this invisible network, and behind every single escape was an untold number of quiet, unsung heroes, farmers, ministers, teachers, and families who opened their doors, shared their last loaf of bread, and risked imprisonment or death for the simple sake of a stranger's freedom. It was not an act of rebellion in the traditional sense. It was an act of conscience, an act of radical humanity. In the profound silence of those nights, footsteps moved through cornfields and across creeks, inching their way step by painful step toward freedom. The railroad didn't run on steam. It ran on hope and whispers. The Underground Railroad was decried as a criminal conspiracy, a theft of property on a grand scale. Pro-slavery newspapers, their pages filled with vitriol and fear, accused Northern abolitionists of not just stealing property, but of actively inciting rebellion. Can you feel the panic in their words? Rumors of insurrection, of violent uprisings, spread like wildfire, and these fears were sometimes used to justify even more brutal crackdowns on enslaved communities, tightening the chains in response to the desire for freedom. And yet the railroad pressed on. In fact, the very intensity of the backlash only seemed to deepen the resolve of its operators, hardening their spirits against the storm. They dug their tunnels deeper, they added more false walls to their homes, they built tighter, more secret networks. Some, facing the growing reach of federal enforcement, moved further north, establishing new havens in Canada. The resistance didn't stop the railroad. It only revealed just how powerful and effective it had become. A powerful paradox emerged across the nation. Every capture of a fugitive slave sparked righteous outrage in the North, while every successful escape fueled paranoia and anger in the South. Every single clash, every legal battle, every desperate flight pushed the nation closer and closer to a breaking point, a deep, festering wound that would soon erupt into the cataclysm of civil war. But before the great armies marched, before the battle flags were sown and hoisted into the sky, there were the whispers. There were the wagons moving silently in the dead of night. There was the quiet, unwavering rebellion of ordinary people doing what the law strictly forbade and what their conscience absolutely demanded. The Civil War came a cleansing fire that tore the nation apart and ultimately put it back together. With it came the Emancipation Proclamation, the fall of the Confederacy, and the legal constitutional end of slavery in the United States. But we must remember this long before Abraham Lincoln signed a single document, long before the great armies clashed at Antietam or Gettysburg. Freedom was already being claimed. It was being claimed in secret by torchlight, by footstep. It was being claimed by those who ran through the darkness, and perhaps even more miraculously, by those who, having found their own freedom, reached back into that same darkness to help others follow. The Underground Railroad was never building a monument or a government program. It left behind no statues at the time, no official medals, no comprehensive records. Its legacy was far more ephemeral and far more enduring. It was carved into the very soil of the nation, etched into the constellations of the stars, and woven into the sacred memories of those who walked its invisible paths. It lived in the stories that were whispered from one generation to the next, stories shared around firesides, sometimes believed, sometimes dismissed as folklore. And yet it persisted. Today, the paths walked by those courageous fugitives are honored in museums, memorials, and carefully preserved homes. Places like the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad, Visitor Center in Maryland, or the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati stand as quiet, powerful testaments to those who risked everything for the simple, profound concept of liberty. But its true legacy goes far beyond any single location or building. It lies in the radical idea that ordinary people, when faced with a monstrous and seemingly insurmountable injustice, can find profound ways to resist even without armies, without laws, and without any conventional power. They resisted with coded quilts and whispered songs, with lanterns placed in dark windows, with unlocked doors, and with an unspoken life or death trust. They forged complex networks without a single blueprint. They helped complete strangers with no promise of reward, motivated only by a shared sense of humanity. They answered the question again and again. Not, "What can I do?" but "What must I do?" That is the Underground Railroad's deepest, most resonant lesson. It is not just that freedom is precious, but that it is always possible, and that courage does not always roar. Sometimes it simply waits patiently in a dark field after midnight, its heart pounding, holding out a hand. The echoes of that railroad live on today. They live in every act of conscience that defies cruelty, in every effort to protect the vulnerable, to speak the truth when it is dangerous, and to offer safe passage when the world is burning. Because injustice doesn't always wear chains anymore, but it still walks among us. And so too must we. Somewhere out there the stars are still overhead, the same stars that guided them, and someone somewhere is still whispering to another, "This way, you're almost free." Now let us travel from that hope, from that guiding North Star, to a world built of ice and silence. Let the whispers of the railroad fade and listen instead to the wind. Inuit mythology does not come to life with great flashes of lightning or on golden thrones. It emerges slowly, quietly, like breath crystallizing on frost. It lives in the snow, in the profound silence between the gusts of wind, in the vast empty spaces where words are few and meaning is deep. These stories were not written on paper or papyrus. They were carved into the living memory of a people shaped by the eternal wind and carried across thousands of years by the human voice and the flickering light of a seal oil lamp. The Inuit people have inhabited the harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving Arctic for millennia, a world of vast white landscapes, of shifting sea ice, and of long, unbroken nights that stretch for months. In this frozen world, survival depends entirely on a deep and abiding respect for nature, and so too does their mythology. Their stories aren't simply entertainment for a long winter's night. They are essential lessons. They teach how to live, how to hunt, how to honor the delicate, precarious balance between humans, animals, and the spirits that watch over all. Here, the line between the natural and the supernatural is as thin as new ice. The wind can whisper your name. The ocean can breathe. The animals can hear your thought. Unlike many mythologies that create a great chasm between gods and mortals, Inuit tales are far more intimate. The spirits live among the people. They watch from the ice floes, they guide from the swirling snow, and sometimes they punish. They are not distant and abstract. They are deeply, frighteningly personal. The elders would tell these tales in low, rhythmic voices, inside snow houses, the family wrapped in warm furs with the wind howling its own story just outside the walls. Children listened not just to learn the plots, but to understand the very land they lived on. A myth about a clever raven wasn't just a bird tale. It taught the value of ingenuity and the danger of trickery. A story about a vengeful seal spirit wasn't just an eerie ghost story. It was a vital reminder to the hunters to offer thanks for the animal's life, to show respect for its sacrifice. Time itself moves differently in the Arctic, and so did the storytelling. There were no clocks, no rush to get to the end. A single story could stretch over an entire night or even a whole season. Each retelling would shift slightly, like drifting snow shaped by the teller, the audience, and the feeling of that particular moment. Inuit mythology is not a single unified book or a neat pantheon of gods. It is a vast constellation of beliefs shaped by different Inuit groups across the vast territories of Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. But the core themes echo across the ice. Transformation survival, the powerful spirits of animals, the immense power of the sea, and the mysterious, sorrowful presence of Sedna, the sea goddess, the mother of all marine life. These aren't just old tales collecting dust. They are living echoes in the ice, still carried by the wind, still whispered in the long, beautiful darkness. Beneath the frozen, shifting waves of the Arctic Ocean, in a kingdom of cold silence and drifting bones lives Sedna. She is not a goddess in the classical sense. She does not sit on a golden throne, and she does not wear a crown of pearls. She is tangled in the deep ocean currents, her hair long and dark and matted with sorrow, her fingers lost to a terrible betrayal. Sedna is the most powerful and feared spirit in Inuit mythology, the mother of all sea creatures. The seals, the whales, the walruses, and the fish, all of them, are said to have been born from her sacrificed body. It is she who governs the ocean's bounty, and if she is angered by disrespect, the hunt will fail. The sea will go quiet. The animals will vanish, and the people on the ice above will go hungry. Her story, like the sea itself, changes from place to place, as all true oral traditions do. But the bones of the tale remain the same. Once she was a young woman. Some say she was the beautiful daughter of a creator god, while others say she was a mortal girl of no special birth. Many versions of the story tell of how she proudly refused all her suitors, or how she was tricked into marrying a bird or a dog who was cleverly disguised as a handsome man. Her father, seeking either to rescue her from this terrible marriage or to rid himself of the shame she had brought upon him, takes her away in his kayak. But a great storm rises the sea, churning and crashing around their tiny boat. Her father, gripped by terror or a cold desperation, throws Sedna overboard into the raging icy water. She clings desperately to the side of the boat, her hands frozen to the gunwale, screaming for his help. But he, in his fear, takes his knife and cuts off her fingers one by one. As each severed joint falls into the churning sea, it is transformed. Each piece of her becomes a creature, a seal, a fish, a whale. Finally, Sedna sinks into the black depths. She does not die. She becomes something else. Now she dwells in a shadowy realm at the bottom of the sea, her spirit forever watching her hair, always tangled with the sorrows of her past. When hunters are greedy, boastful, or disrespectful, when they waste the meat of the animals they kill, she becomes enraged and withholds the animals from them. She must be appeased. A shaman must be sent in a deep trance to journey down beneath the sea. There the shaman must find her calm her terrible fury and gently, respectfully comb her tangled hair, asking for her forgiveness and promising that the people will remember to be grateful. Sedna is pain. Sedna is power. She is the living memory of betrayal, and she is the keeper of the sacred balance. She is the reason hunters must always give thanks, why no part of a killed animal is ever wasted, why a reverent silence must follow the kill. She is the ocean's profound grief and its life-giving mercy. And even now, under the ice, Sedna waits, listening. In the Inuit world, animals are not just animals. They are watchers. They are teachers. They are powerful spirits wrapped in fur and feather fin and fang. To survive in the Arctic is to live among beings that are intelligent, aware, and possessed of a power that humans can only borrow. You do not conquer them. You speak to them. You ask for their help. And sometimes, if you are worthy, they speak back. Inuit mythology is filled with incredible stories of animals that walk between worlds not just physically, but spiritually. Some can transform appearing to humans in their animal form one moment, and as a person the next. These shapeshifters carry both profound wisdom and great danger. The raven Tulugak is one of the most enduring and complex figures. He is a trickster, clever creative, and utterly unpredictable. In some stories, he is a great hero who steals the sun, moon, and stars from a selfish being who had hoarded them, and in so doing, he brings light to the world. In other tales, he plays mischievous games with humans or rearranges the entire landscape just for his own amusement. Raven is not evil, but he is never entirely safe. He is a constant reminder that nature does not always follow your expectations, and that cleverness can be a force for both creation and chaos. The polar bear Nanook is not just a mighty hunter to be feared. He is sometimes a guardian spirit, a teacher of strength and endurance, and sometimes he is a man who lives inside a bear's body. To kill a polar bear is to enter into a sacred contract. The bear must be honored, its bones carefully returned to the earth, its soul thanked for its sacrifice. If this contract is broken, the spirits of the bears may turn cold and silent, refusing to give themselves to the hunters. And then there are the spirits that guard the animals themselves. Every single creature, the seal, the fox, the caribou, is believed to have an inua, a kind of soul or life essence. If an animal is mistreated, killed wastefully, or taken without respect, its inua can return in anger. Some Inuit stories tell of these animal spirits coming back disguised as people to test or punish those hunters who have forgotten gratitude. And always beneath the surface of these tales, there is the quiet, humbling truth: humans are not the masters of nature. We are guests, and temporary ones at that. The animals seen and unseen are older than our memory. So children are taught from their earliest days, do not laugh at the raven. Do not waste the meat that you hunt. Do not step on a sleeping seal's shadow. The spirits are always watching not from some distant sky, but from the snow, from the trees, and from behind eyes that do not blink. In the vast Arctic, where the land seems endless and the sky feels close enough to touch, there are those who can move between the world of the seen and the world of the unseen. They are not priests, and they are not prophets. They are something older, wilder. They are the Angakuk, the shamans of the Inuit. An Angakuk is not chosen lightly. Some are born with signs, unusual dreams, prophetic visions, or having survived an impossible accident. Others are trained over many years by an elder shaman, but all of them must learn to walk the razor's edge between life and death, between sanity and silence, between the earth and the spirit world. Their role is a dual one. They are both healer and messenger. When someone in the community is sick, and no herb or practical remedy can cure them, the Angakuk is called. When the seals vanish from the ice floes, or when storms rise without end, it is the Angakuk who must travel not by foot, but by soul. Through the rhythmic beating of a drum, through deep trance, chanting, and controlled breathing, they enter other realms, worlds hidden beneath the ocean, inside the sky, or behind the very fabric of the land itself. It is not a vision. It is a journey. In these spirit realms, the Angakuk meets beings that no ordinary person should ever face: the ghosts of the angry dead, the spirits of animals who have been denied their due thanks, and the great powerful forces of nature, like Sedna, the sea goddess. Only the Angakuk possesses the power and courage to descend into her underwater realm, to comb her tangled hair, to soothe her terrible fury, and to restore balance to the human world. But the price for this power is heavy. The Angakuk often lives apart from the community, respected, but not always trusted. Their dreams are strange, their eyes see too much, and they carry burdens that others cannot comprehend. They know which child will fall sick long before the first symptoms appear. They hear voices when the wind is perfectly still. They are not gods. They can make mistakes. And some, it is said, become corrupted using their powers for personal gain. Or worse, they fail to return from a spirit journey, their souls lost forever. These fallen shamans are deeply feared, their names rarely spoken. Still, in times of profound trouble, it is the Angakuk who is called. They will sit by the fire, close their eyes, and slip away across the ice into the darkness toward the very heart of the unseen. Not everyone believes in spirits, but when the food vanishes, when a child won't wake, when the sea turns black, everyone listens. In the deep Arctic night, when the snow is still and the dogs refuse to bark, the elders say to keep your voice low, not because of the wolves and not because of the wind, but because the dead are listening. Inuit mythology does not draw a firm, uncrossable line between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The dead are not gone. They linger. Sometimes as a fond memory, sometimes as a comforting presence, and sometimes as something colder, a restless spirit. These spirits, known in some traditions as Tungait or Angiak, are not rare. They can be angry, they can be hungry, they can be lost. And when the living break the old taboos, they often return. What kind of taboos? There are many ancient rules passed down through generations, not always explained but always followed. Never whistle at the northern lights. Never cook the meat of certain animals in the same pot. Never speak the name of the recently dead too soon. These acts and many others are thought to invite the spirits back before they are ready or before they have peacefully moved on. The dead must be respected. Burials were done with immense care. Personal items were left with the body tools, knives, amulets, not for sentiment, but so the spirit would not feel cheated or empty-handed in the next life. Graves were often built with stones piled high, both to protect the body from predators and to remind the living that something sacred lies beneath the snow. But even then, spirits sometimes wander. Some return out of love, a mother to watch over her child, a hunter to guide his family. But others come back out of pain, betrayal, or simply because they cannot find rest. Their shadows might flicker across the tent wall. Their voices might echo in the creak of the ice. An unexplained illness, a string of bad luck, a persistent cold that no fire can cure, all of these might be signs that a spirit is near. When this happens, the Angakuk is consulted. Through chants and offerings, they may be able to speak to the dead to offer closure, or even to guide the lost spirit to its final rest. But sometimes only silence and strict observance of the old ways can protect you. And so the people remain careful. They do not joke about death. They do not speak carelessly at night. Because in the Arctic, the past does not sleep. It walks and it remembers.